People and Politics.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of People and Politics podcast. My name is Paul O'Kane. I'm a member of the Scottish Parliament for West Scotland, and I created this podcast because I want to hear unique stories about the people and the communities in the region I represent, and all the wonderful things that are going on out there, and maybe some listeners who want to hear those stories as well. Sometimes people in a community are brought together over a shared goal or something that they want to see happen in their area, and through hard work and determination, they make sure it's delivered. And well, that's certainly the case with the organisation I'm speaking to today. We're joined by Linwood War Memorial Association, who spent many years now working to deliver a living memorial to the people of Linwood who have given their lives in war and conflict since the Great War. And today I'm delighted to be joined by members of the association, including Joan Melville, who's been a driving force and has been involved for a long time, and indeed Neil McLean, who I know is an RAF veteran as well and has come to be involved in the association. So thank you so much for being here and for coming in to chat to us all about Linwood and about the work of the association. But perhaps before we get to talking about the memorial and your work, can I maybe just ask you both who you are and how you got involved and what your role is in the association?
Okay, thanks for having us, Paul. I'm Joan Melville. I'm one of the founders of the campaign. I've been chair of the association since it started. I'm currently the secretary, and I'm a trustee of the charity.
Great, fantastic. And Neil, how did you get involved?
I'm also a charity trustee. I do the research for the team, and we're hoping to get a roll of honour of 100.
It's all right. Hundreds of names, I imagine, yeah.
We've currently got 142 names.
Wow, okay, that's great. And, you know, that's really interesting because I suppose my first question is how did this all begin? Folk might know that I've been involved in the Neilston War Memorial Association for a long time, and the reason we started was because there wasn't a common war memorial in Neilston for lots of different historical reasons. But was it similar in Linwood, Joan?
Yeah, very much so. I suppose the first war memorial for Linwood was promised in April 1919. They actually had a concert in the public school and they raised 20 guineas.
Wow.
Don't know where the 20 guineas is.
And how much should it be worth now?
I know. And then it was discussed again in January 1920. There was a promise of a memorial, and again it was never built.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to fast forward to November 2020, and myself and my friend Donna Scott, we were moaning, as women do, about not having a local place for remembrance. So Donna has a family member who's on our roll of honour. And I said to her, let's just stop moaning about it. Let's go and do something about it. So we started the Linwood War Memorial campaign. And that was just a Facebook campaign trying to gauge whether we had some community support. And then that moved on. We became an association with office bearers, a formal committee. And in January 23, we became a charity.
Great, fantastic. And I suppose trying to go out there into the community and talk to the community about these issues, how did you find that? Because I suppose for a lot of people it's very personal, you know, and they've got a strong connection. For a lot of people they recognise that the importance of the history, but sometimes for some generations as well it feels a bit distant, you know. And did you find that mix, I suppose, of views?
It's been really mixed across the community. We found that actually the school kids are more enthusiastic than anybody. And I think that's because we managed to bring history to life. Now, Neil can tell you more about the research, but we have families on our roll of honour that are still in Linwood today. So while I'm in a school speaking about something that, you know, participating in something that we're going to do with the kids, you can tell them a name from somebody of a roll of honour, and then there's giggles because that's so-and-so's granda's great-granda. And so they all know who everybody is. When we started, we only had 58 names, and Neil has done a tremendous job with the team in researching. We're now at 142 fallen, and it's been able to bring that social history and heritage to life. I mean, it's not just that they went to war or they gave their life at war. We know where they lived, what their jobs were before, what industries we had. It's all of those things we've found out along the way that keeps people interested.
And that was very much my experience in Neilston and Matt Drennan and others, telling those stories of folk who and lived in different times and had different jobs. I mean, a lot of people who were itinerant workers, so they wouldn't stay in one place. They were maybe farm workers, obviously maybe different dynamics, but certainly kind of up the Camden Road, there was obviously farmland and things like that as well. So Neil, you've found these 140 names. So, do you want to tell us a wee bit about that process and that sort of thing?
Well, we started with 58 names, as Jodie said. We had the list of names from St Conville's Church, the Linwood Parish Church, and recently we came across the Reedgare Memorial, which has actually been found at the Johnston Museum.
Right.
Which is side of Morrison's.
Yeah. And Reedgare, quite a big firm big industry within Linwood. Yeah.
Yeah, they did a lot of machinery.
Yeah.
But we'll find a lot of our workers, through use of the marriage certificates and census, a lot of them worked in the paper mill.
Right, of course, yeah, because it was another industry,
there.
yeah. And I suppose it's all those individual stories you've been able to find. I mean, some of them will be quite interesting because, as Joan said, it's people who still have family in the village who left their ordinary life and went to either the First World War or Second. I mean, have you found the stories to be quite interesting?
I start off with the individual itself, and what I'll do is I'll go and find out when they were born, the names of the parents, where they came from, and their children, so the siblings of the fallen. And quite often, a lot of the fallen would not have got married, so that's how their history stops, but their family continues through their children.
And a lot of young men, I imagine, particularly in the Great War. Yes. Yeah.
We've got ages from 18, and we've got one all the way up to 46.
Right. Yeah. And very often, the tragedy of, I suppose, that Great War was a lot of young men would lie about their age. So we know, and it's hard sometimes to define that because you're relying on records, but we know that some people were probably younger, weren't they, than 18?
Yes.
Yeah. And have you found, so we've got those stories from the Great War, but also then the Second World War as well, being as represented? How many do you know?
On the Great War, we've got 127 names. Mm-hmm. For the Second World War, we're 13. So it's quite a low number.
Yes.
But again, a lot of them, their birth might have been registered in Paisley or Johnston, somewhere local. Mm-hmm. But back in pre-World War I, they were born maybe at home, whereas later on they went to hospitals, make a difference then. Mm. We recently came across the Welcome Home Fund list at the end of the Second World War, and there was 233 names listed, and 7 of which were listed as giving the supreme sacrifice, which confirmed the details we had.
And what sort of sources have you been using? Has it been mainly through, library? Like Mitchell Library obviously keeps a number of records, the National Records of Scotland. I mean, how do you kind of do your research?
We start with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Mm-hmm. That will give us the service number. From there we can go on to the Scottish National War Memorial. That will sometimes give the place of birth. That will help us. Then we use Scotland's People. That will give us the birth registration, marriage registration and census. From there we can also go to Find a Grave. That will confirm the dates, and sometimes it will give you details of family members. Mm-hmm. The Mitchell Library has been very good. On the 5th floor we've managed to get access to the Glasgow Evening Times through Microfiche, and through using that we've got images of now 56 of the fallen. We originally started off with only 3 out of 58. We've now got 54 out of 142.
Wow, that's great. So you can really have that visual representation, and that must be important if families get in touch as well, wanting to know a bit more, because what I found in the Neilston context is folks from all over the world, because folk left towns and villages and went to Australia and America, and they want to know who were these people and what happened to them as well. So have you found that sort of international dimension?
Yeah, we've got over 30 regiments covered through our list of the fallen, but some are from Canada. And that was people that were born here, worked in Linwood, emigrated because that was the thing, and then came back to support. So we do have a number of international, so to speak, regiments reflected, but we've also got people that have moved from Linwood since, and they keep in contact. They are members of the association, or they follow our Facebook page and get their updates like that.
Yeah, and it just shows you the breadth and depth of communities that go around the world, and people who want to support and want to help the place that they call home and still respect as home, you know. But it's interesting because I know that there's the Victoria Cross memorial at the Tweedy Hall, so that's an interesting one, isn't
correct.
it? That's
so we've got a little plaque to Hugh McIver, who won the Victoria Cross, but we've also have a list of men, some who gave their life, some who returned, who won the military medals. I think we've got 8.
Yes, we've got 8.
Okay. 8 military medals for gallantry.
Wow.
And we have some of the tales for that. We don't have all the records, but we have some of the tales for that.
And in terms of, because some of the stories I find just so moving and so amazing, particularly, the Great War, but even D-Day, in the Second World War, and the sort of the way that people gave so much of themselves to save others, is inspiring. So you're finding some of those stories.
Yeah, we've got a few of those recorded. Some of the records don't exist, so we don't know why they won the medal.
Right.
But some we do have the stories around it. Hugh, who's in the research team, he's an ex-librarian, loves to read, and I think he's read every book that's published, so he's always coming up with new facts and figures, and he's actually got a whole presentation on Linwood men from Gallipoli that he's pulled together. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And there's a one in particular, Neil, that sticks out for you has been quite inspiring in terms of...
The problem with that is the work records that were held in London were destroyed, most of them.
Really?
So there's very little to say what they got it for.
Okay. Okay, so it's quite hard actually to... Right, no, that's interesting. I didn't realise actually the damage had been done to the records, so...
Yeah. It was in 1940, the building was on fire, so a lot of the records were burnt or water damaged.
Sure.
But there have been recoveries, so of the 127 of the First World War, we've got about 15 documents left.
Right.
But most of the information we get is from their medal cards.
Okay. Does that give you a little indication as to,
It'll tell you what they received, but it won't tell you why. That's
right,
the problem.
But and it will tell you what theatre they won it in terms of...
Yeah, it will tell you where they got it, yes.
Wow. And that's actually interesting as well, because you become have to be a bit of a detective, don't you, trying to kind of piece it all together, which is, I imagine, quite challenging at times as well.
Yeah, because we're looking at 30 different regiments, and at different times, we have quite, I would say, maybe 5 different regiments, all serving at Gallipoli within the same space of a year, for all different areas.
And there was no sort of, because we know in other parts of Scotland what would happen is very commonly that people would join one regiment together, but was it quite varied in Linwood in terms of where people went?
I would say the most we had for one regiment was maybe 16 people.
Right.
But we had Argyll and Southern Highlanders, Gordon Highlanders, Royal Scots Fusiliers. We had so many. We had the ones, English regiments, Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers from Ireland. So
wow, okay. Yeah.
Quite varied there.
It's a real breadth and depth
yes.
Wow. And I wonder if I can ask about our modern context. So obviously it can be very difficult if you've lost people more recently, certainly on the Neilston Memorial, a young man who lost his life in Northern Ireland. We have a young man who lost his life in Afghanistan, but has there been any modern names that will be added?
We have one from Northern Ireland and we have one from the Falklands.
Wow, okay. So again, I suppose bringing that into a more modern context, although we probably still think of the Falklands as being recent, but actually in some ways now that's starting to really slip into history as well to some extent. But I suppose it's good to always remind, particularly younger generations, that I suppose the failure of diplomacy after those two wars is that we end up in other conflicts. But the aspiration to peace, I suppose, is really important. And have you found that? Because sometimes with war memorials, people say, why are you doing that? Why are you glorifying war? But it's not about that. It's about honouring the sacrifice, but it's also about aspiring to a more peaceful world. Do you find that, Joan?
Our war memorial is slightly different from most because of the space that we have and what the plans are for it. So I can certainly say some of the adult population have said, why are you glorifying war? But most people are behind it because of, lest we forget, they don't want to forget. Everybody's, maybe second generation away from the Second World War now, but the kids get quite passionate about it. As I've said, it's bringing history to life for them. We start working with primary 4, so primary 4, 5 and 6. So we're translating what is a poppy for the kids, and they make poppies for our poppy display. But we also have, by the time we get to primary 6 and 7, we're telling them about the animals that were lost in the war. And the thing that's went down the best with the kids was carrier pigeons.
Wow.
Because they just think mobile phone.
Of course,
and
yeah.
And when you explained what a carrier pigeon was, this was fascinating. So we've got a competition that's just been judged just now for our archway entrance. And when I was working with the kids for that, one little boy said, Miss Joan, when you were here last, you told us about pigeons. Have you got a copy of a photograph of a pigeon on your phone? So I brings out a carrier pigeon. And he said, I'm putting a pigeon on my archway. And I've got this fabulous design with a big giant pigeon on the top of it. And then his pal said, you putting a pigeon on yours? I'm putting a pigeon on mine. So I think we've got 10 entries that have pigeons on them.
Yeah, and it's amazing because, seeing it through the eyes of other people, and particularly a younger generation, it's what resonates with them and how you tell that story. And, that sounds really interesting. It's lovely to hear that the young people are involved in design elements of that. Because I know, obviously, beginning of this year, you confirmed that you've secured the piece of land, which was a labour of love to get to that point. So for those who don't kind of know Linwood or know Linwood a wee bit, where is it and why that site?
So, when we started the campaign, the first thing was to find out where could we site a war memorial. And we took every idea that every member of the community put forward to us, and we put it to the council in an options study, and that included land that we might have to buy, not just council land. And one by one they were rejected for valid reasons. So we ended up, our site is on the corner of Bridge Street in Linwood, with the A761 to the front and the old Candron Road to the back. Now, although it was our last chance saloon type piece of land, it's really poignant because in 1914, if our guys left to go to war, they would have walked across the old Candron Road, and the last thing they would have seen of home is our site. So we're really quite pleased with it. Yeah. It's a huge big site. It's 2,737 square metres, and the plan is to have 3 different zones. So when you enter from the front, so we've got our archway competition just now, so the entrance will be through an archway. That leads you to our viewing gallery. So the front of the site is 2.5 metres. You look down 2.5 metres to the bottom of the site. So we've got a little viewing platform, and we're going to display some of the social history and heritage that we've found there. Then there's a little winding path that leads to the memorial space. So the memorial space has a 4-metre high obelisk. And again, that was designed by one of our schools. It's surrounded by benches and gardens. The benches have a dual purpose, so as well as being a space for contemplation, it will have phone numbers like Samaritans and Childline. So it's got a dual role. Then there's a winding path goes from that into the community gardens. Now the winding path is completely wheelchair accessible, so everybody can use it. We've tried to be as inclusive as we possibly can. Each school has their own garden, so we've got a Linwood High School garden, we've got a Woodlands Primary Garden, we've got an Our Lady of Peace garden, and we have involved all of the schools and community groups in designing those gardens. So we met with the Elderly Forum. They gave us their memories of, that flower reminds me of, and our landscape architect has built all those flowers into our planting plans. So we've then got a little winding path. Now, when we took over the site, it had Japanese knotweed. It's got a lot of fly tipping. It's got an awful lot of diseased and dying or dead trees. So we have to replace some of those trees. So we'll now have an avenue of trees with seating. And then we've got a sensory garden. So Melville Day Centre, the staff and the users there help design a sensory garden for us. And that's about colour, scent, texture, sound. There's a whole host in that. And then the third zone is our eco zone, so it's a wildlife corridor. So the planting will change to wild meadows, and the intention is to encourage biodiversity. We have no insects in the area. Everything's choked out by ivy. So we'll open up the canopy. We'll have bird boxes, bat boxes, bug hotels. The school kids are building those. And our ecologist wild surveys, they're working with the schools to teach them about the local flora and fauna. We had an ecological appraisal done of the site. We know we've got a fox on site, and the biggest thing for us was we found that we'd an otter.
Oh, wow.
An otter coming up to the side of the river. That means the river's
Amazing.
clean.
Yeah.
So that's huge for us.
And folk, I guess, passing by don't always think that it is as clean as that, and that you would have something like an otter on site. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds to me that this is so much more than just a memorial. That's obviously at the heart of this, and it's so important. But what it suggests to me is that you're creating almost a park space in the town centre, which actually in some ways will be such a fitting tribute to young lives and young men who went to war and didn't return to the place they called home. And it's a legacy of giving opportunities to a younger generation and an older generation and folk who live in Linwood to enjoy that space. I mean, was that certainly the vision?
What we didn't want was somewhere that you visited once a year on Remembrance Sunday. So the memorial space is a nod to our community of the past. The gardens is a nod to our community of now, today. And the eco space is a nod to the community of the future. So it's a living memorial. That's how we term it.
That's really, really lovely. And it just sounds, so different and so innovative, and, really, really impressive. And where are we in the journey? Because we've been at this a long time, and, you're now at the stage where I think planning permission's been sought, and we're about to go into that process. Yeah. So what's your kind of timescales for delivery?
We got a community asset transfer under the Community Empowerment Act. We then had to negotiate a lease. Who knew leases were so legally complex?
Yes. Are there any council officers listening?
There's a break point in the lease for the council. So it's an in perpetuity lease, but if we don't have sufficient funds or have moved forward sufficiently within the first 3 years, from the 1st of January this year, the council can break the lease, and we have to restore it to the condition we were given it in. I don't know where I'm getting all the fly tipping to put back, but that's besides the point. Yeah. So our focus at the moment is applying for whatever funding grants we can get, fundraising, so we're always doing different events, making things, selling them, and the whole community is involved in that. And planning application would have gone in this month, but we're waiting for the judging to be complete on the archway, so that we can put the archway in our application.
Sure. And in terms of funding, because I know that's been something that's been a big challenge, it was a big challenge in Neilston because people don't always want to fund new memorials. What I always found quite frustrating was there was lots of grants to fix memorials that exist, and with the centenaries of Paisley War Memorial, for example, I think we were talking about that earlier. It was dead easy to get funding for that, but it's quite hard to get a new memorial funded. So how have you found all of that, and what are you still needing to raise, I suppose?
It's a minefield. So the overall project's £295,000. Mm-hmm. And we've got a QS on board that's costed all of that up for us. We decided that the obelisk, which is the nod to our fallen, has to be fundraised by the community, so we'll apply for no grants for that. So we're about 50% into the funds for that, so that's set aside in the bank account. The rest of the funds, so having specialists on board to, architect, civil and structural engineer, everything that we've needed for the design has been gifted to us by professional companies. Well, I've asked them. I asked them and they gave.
You're quite persuasive.
Yes. So can I name them?
Of course.
Graham and Sibbald have given us our architectural services and our planning advisor. Will Rudd Davidson have done all our civil and structural engineer. Malcolm Group have done our surveys, ground surveys. Wild Surveys have done our ecological surveys. Sitka have done our tree surveys. These have all been done free of charge. Yeah. And because we've got Japanese knotweed that we inherited, we now have to manage that. And a wonderful company called Clearcut have committed to manage that for the next 5 years free of charge for us.
That's amazing. That's great. Real support there from all those local businesses.
So that's been fabulous. We've got a plan in place that does things in phases. So things like the benches, we're anticipating the community will sponsor them. So there's 5 benches. We know that 2 of them are already sponsored. Wow. So those will be sponsored things. New trees going in, we think people will sponsor those. And some things we will have to apply for funding for, but mainly for the ecological aspects of the gardens. So we're quite confident that it can be achieved.
Great.
And we're busy filling out all the application forms that we have to make sure that we get that.
Okay, and if anyone's listening to this and wants to help and wants to support or has a source of funding or wants to make a contribution, what's the best way to do that then, Joan, just to get in touch?
Contact, telephone, email,
Great.
Facebook page.
And we can share those details or get in touch with my office and we can help as well. So does the research continue, Neil? You've still got work to do in terms of finding more names potentially?
I believe we've got to the point where we've got 142 names. I don't expect to get any more.
Right.
But if somebody was to come forward with more information, I would like to find it.
Sure.
And maybe go further into the research. If anyone's interested in the research I've done, we have a Facebook page. It's the Linwood War Memorial Association Research, and each one of the fallen has its own story about the family, the siblings, if they were married, children. It gives you the full story of each of them. It also tells you the story of Blenheim that crashed in 1942, which until this year we had no idea about. So it keeps on adding to the story.
Great. So folk can go on there and just find out information as you kind of post it and stuff like that.
Yes, and we've also created a family tree for each of the fallen. So if you look at their surname and first name, it will also have like a dash LWMA to signify Linwood War Memorial Association. And again, family trees from that. The good thing with that is some people come forward with information. I got a message only 2 years ago, and it would say that the medals and memorial plaque of one of the individuals was being sold at auction.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So that was something we never knew about, and I was able to get the images, if not the items themselves.
Yes, of course. Wow, great. Good. So again, I think if people are interested or have a story to tell or are looking for information, then get in touch and we can pair you up and see if we can take that forward. So that's really, really useful. So we've got a couple of minutes left on the podcast because time always flies when you're having a conversation. But is there anything you feel I've missed that you want to say, Joan, in terms of what you need or where you're headed in terms of this great project?
We always need help. You know, it's not just... need help with funding. I'll give you an example. The trees in the area are so badly choked out by ivy that if we don't start to manage the trees, they will die. The healthy ones will die. But we can't cut the ivy off without damaging the trees, so we have to do it professionally. Now, some of the trees have ivy that's a couple of centimetres across, and I can snip it with my secateurs at the bottom of the tree and it'll die back. Others are 6 inches thick, so it needs proper equipment. So sometimes it's, have we got somebody that will volunteer a couple of hours to help us do things? Even litter picking in the area. Team Up to Clean Up have been great, but there is always fly tipping and there is always litter to be picked up just because of the wind. We do gala days and fundraising events. Sometimes it's hard to build the gazebo, so sometimes it's just turning up to help us put our gazebo up and set up our stall. Sometimes it's helping out at our stall. We have a community poppy display every year. We have a service every year, but the poppy display takes a lot of time and effort to hang the poppies. The first year we hoped to have 200 poppies and we got 1,507. Wow. The second year we did Flanders Fields, so the kids made poppies on sticks and we put them in the ground and we had over 2,000 poppies plus what was on the fence. And last year we lost count. We think we had about 4,000 poppies. Wow. And from what we've already been told this year, it's going to be even bigger. So it takes a lot of time to hang them and then to take them all down because we don't want to dilute remembrance period, so we take them down in December. ready for the next year. So there's always something to do.
Always something to be done. So if anyone is interested in Linwood or has a connection to Linwood or even just interest in this period in our history, then don't hesitate to get in touch. And I suppose my final question is, your motivations for getting involved. You care clearly about your community, about Linwood, you care about the heritage. Is that what motivated you, Neil, to get involved?
For the last few years, I'd been doing research for some groups in the Netherlands.
Okay.
It's people that adopt graves of the fallen, and I was doing research for some of them, and I thought I could be doing research for local, and this was the closest one I found, and it's been very happy to do that. Good,
very fulfilling. That's great, and sounds like you are finding so many interesting stories and great, fantastic. And Joan, what's great about Linwood and the community, and what have you found in your time doing this?
Linwood's not any different from any other town. It's a residential area. It's got its ups and downs. There's nothing spectacular, so to speak, but what you do find is there's a thriving community there, all ages. We're surrounded by beautiful countryside, so we've got cycle tracks that go for miles, and people care. I was asked recently, why do you bother doing all this? And my answer was, if our 142 fallen and our 233 people on our welcome home list hadn't bothered, where would we be? So somebody has to bother, and there are lots of people in our community not just bothering about the War Memorial, but bother about each other. It's a community that takes care of its own.
Of course, that's really, really moving to hear. It's in our own little corner of the world. We sit and we see what goes on in the world now, and again the failure of diplomacy and war in Europe again, and what we see in the Middle East, and we're all touched by that conflict. And the important thing is to have these spaces to reflect on the importance of peace and the importance of dialogue and bringing people together. And it really sounds to me like you're telling that past, present, and future story with that real aspiration for the community of Linwood. So thank you so much for giving me your time today and for joining me. And please, if anyone out there is interested in getting involved, then get in touch. And of course, if you've got a story or you've got something that's going on in your community, whether that's in Linwood or beyond, get in touch and we can have you on to People in Politics, and we can have a good old natter and hear what you're getting up to. But thank you so much for your time today, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.